What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. I've got a ton of parts and pieces accumulated here for the Teen Dream Camaro project. The engine you already know about, but I've got a bunch of boxes and everything too. My cross member has come in, the intake manifold, the parts that I want to put into the engine. I even wound up picking up a new-to-me transmission. But before I get into that, I want to do something that I've never shown you how to do before, and that is a compression test. A compression test is a really good way to get an idea of the general health of an engine if you don't know the condition of it. I've already started this engine and it runs, so I'm fairly confident that I'm going to have good compression in all 8 cylinders. But I want to run the compression test A, so I can show you guys how to do it, and B, so I can see if it's necessary for me to pull the engine all the way down to a bare block, check any piston rings or anything like that. Really just to make sure that I have good, even sealing and compression in all 8 cylinders. So the first thing I'm going to do, just to make it easier on myself, I'm going to get the intake manifold pulled off. I'm going to get the exhaust manifolds pulled off. And I'm going to remove the spark plugs. Now, you don't have to do that to do a compression test. If you leave your intake manifold on, just make sure that the throttle is wide open. You don't want to have any restriction in the path of air entering your cylinders. And also make sure your exhaust isn't blocked up or clogged up or anything like that. There should be as free a path as possible for the air to get into and out of your cylinders. All right, everybody, so got the intake manifold and exhaust manifolds off of this engine. If you're new to LS engines, I want to show you one of the downfalls of design on these earlier Gen 3 engines with the NOx sensors in the valley. And this is a really good example of it. So you can see down in here with the front NOx sensor, full of water. Down in here with the second NOx sensor, that's more like oil than water. What happens a lot is those little cavities get filled with liquid and grime and crud and all kinds of nasty stuff, and that corrodes your NOx sensors, and that causes you to have a NOx sensor code. It's very, very common in these engines. Now, I see a lot of people seal these up with some RTV silicone. They'll run RTV around the perimeter here because the stock style NOx sensors, I mean, this is hard plastic. I don't know if it's soft when they put it in and it gets hard over time or what, but it doesn't do anything to seal those cavities. Now, when I'm working on one of these engines, especially if I'm going to put it somewhere and I don't want to take the intake manifold off of it again, which is about 95% of the time, I put a new NOx sensor harness in it. And I found this one on Amazon that I really like. And it's got very pliable rubber covers that go over the little opening. And I found that these seal against that valley cover really, really well. They keep water out, they keep anything from getting down in there, which in turn prevents your NOx sensors from corroding and all the associated issues. So I'll put a link in the description to this NOx sensor harness that I use, and hopefully it'll save you some headaches. And the reason I like this instead of doing the RTV is the RTV is kind of like glue. So when you got to take it back apart, it's a headache. But these, when you got to take it back apart, you just wedge a screwdriver or a trim remover underneath the edge there, and it pops back out again. So I really like it. A little tip for you if you haven't messed with these, or even if you have and you want to get away from putting RTV on those NOx sensor covers. Okay, so compression test is really pretty simple. You take your compression tester. Most kits come with a couple different size thread adapters, so you should be able to find the one that matches your spark plug thread. Usually they seal with a rubber O-ring. So you get your test line, your adapter, thread it into the spark plug hole. And it doesn't need to be super tight, just tight enough to put pressure down on the O-ring. And then you'll typically have a gauge also. Most of the ones I've seen have a little quick connector, just like that. Okay, so I've got my intake manifold off. Remember, if you're leaving yours on, just put the throttle wide open. Exhaust manifolds are off. Remember, if yours are on, just make sure they're clear. There's nothing in the way. There's oil in the engine. I've got my little thread adapter hooked up to my hose here, to my compression tester, and my battery's connected. So now, I'll just crank it over with the starter until I see the needle jump a couple times, and then I'll know what my compression is. And that's reading right at, I'm going to say 112 PSI. I think the engine's cranking a little slow. I'm going to get a battery that's a little stronger and try cranking it again. Okay, I got a battery with a little more juice in it. Let's see what we get. I'm going to call that about 120 PSI. So I'm going to write that down, test all 8 cylinders. I want to see less than 5% difference between all 8 cylinders. Okay, got my compression test finished up. My results right here. So my highest compression was in cylinder number 2. It had 117 PSI. And then my lowest was 110 PSI, which was in 4, 3, 5, and 7. And then 1, 6, and 8 fell in between. But from 117 to 110 is right at 5.5%. So I'm happy with that, especially considering this engine really hasn't been run in, 2 weeks now. And I'm not spinning it over as fast as I would like to be. So I'm totally happy with that level. Next thing I'm going to do, I need to get the heads off, swap the cam. So I'll also need to get the crank pulley off, the front timing cover, and I may pull the oil pan tonight also. I haven't decided on that yet. Heads, the front cover, the crank pulley, the valley cover, all removed. All of those are getting new gaskets. This thing was so filthy, I want it to be clean, so I'm going to put all new gaskets on it when I put it back together. But now I'm going to flip it over, rotate the engine a few times to get all of the lifters pushed up into the lifter trays, and that should give me enough space to get my new camshaft slid in. There we go. Now I can get the oil pan off. I can do my oil pump modification, and then I can get my new cam stuffed in there. Tried to pull the cam out, and it feels like it's caught on something. So rather than force it, I'm just going to flip the engine back over, pull the lifters really quick, and then swap my cam. Okay, now let's see if this cam will cooperate with us. There we go. Okay, I'm going to wipe this thing off, check out all the lobes, make sure everything looks good, and then I'll stick the new one in. I'm out of workbench space, so I'm going to work here on the floor like a savage. This is my new cam. This is an Elgin, what's the part number? Elgin 18E1841P, also commonly known as a sloppy stage 3. It's a more aggressive cam. I'm running this one. The biggest reason is I'm planning on turbocharging this thing next winter. I want to drive it and enjoy it this summer, and next winter I'm going to turbo it. But this should give me plenty of power, naturally aspirated, and it will light the turbos, or turbo, whichever way I decide to go, when I'm ready to do that next year. So it's going in there. It's always a good idea when you get a new cam, get all the shipping grease wiped off of it. You don't want that stuff floating around in your engine if you can avoid it. So give it a good thorough wipe. Do a quick visual inspection on it also and make sure you don't see anything damaged or out of place or anything like that. Any nicks, any bumps, anything like that. I mean, some cams, just like this one, all they ship them in is a box, which there really isn't a ton of protection there. So you just want to check it out, make sure everything looks good. Boom. There she is. Now I'm going to get my timing gear back on it, get my lifters and lifter trays back into place, and then I'm going to flip it over and do my oil pump mod, just to increase oil pressure a little bit. Not a ton, just a little bit. Okay, everybody. So I'm going to do my oil pump modification here. Essentially all I'm going to do is shim the spring that regulates the oil pressure. And that spring is located right underneath of this Allen head screw. It's an 8 Allen. So you knock it loose, take this out, this cap off of here. Now keep in mind, there's a spring inside. So don't let it just fly apart and shoot your pieces all over the place. So you got your little cap and your spring. Now to do this, the spring doesn't even need to come out. All I'm gonna do is put a little shim in the cap here, and that'll help push the spring just a little bit tighter and give me just a little bit more oil pressure. Okay, so I've got my little shim. It's 90 thousandths thick, and it fits right inside of my cap there. So now all I do is thread this back in and tighten it down. That's it. Now that should give me about 5 to 7 psi more oil pressure in the same ranges as before. So not a ton, but just a little bit of extra pressure so I can be confident that everything's getting lubed the way it should be. Okay, everybody, it's the next evening. Next thing I'm gonna do is get my valve springs and valve seals replaced on the heads. I'm using the factory 862 cylinder heads. They should work great for what I'm doing. I've done tons of videos. I think I've done 3 or 4 videos now on rebuilding cylinder heads, doing this at home. I'm still using the same Amazon special valve spring compressor, the same Amazon valve spring seal or valve stem seals, and this time I'm running PAC 1219 valve springs. They should complement my sloppy stage 3 cam nicely. So, I mean, same process as always. Get the old stuff off, get the new stuff in, and just go to it. If you've never done this and you need a little more guidance, I'll put a link to one of my videos on how to do this up above myself here. All right, team. So I've got my heads all prepped and ready to go. The engine block all prepped and ready to go. I'm gonna do what I lovingly refer to as a spray can head gasket replacement. Copper spray gasket. Now, most multi-layer steel head gaskets are indeed reusable head gaskets, both factory ones and aftermarket ones. The factory LS head gaskets that are multi-layer steel have a black, it's kind of like a rubberized coating on them. So I like to put the copper spray on there just to take the place, per se, of that black rubberized coating. That makes me feel a little bit better. Every engine I've taken apart with multi-layer steel head gaskets, I've put those head gaskets right back into it, and I haven't had any problems at all. So this is a great way to save a few dollars on your build. Like I said, multi-layer steel head gaskets are meant to be reused. So you're not gambling. You're just saving yourself a little bit of money. Okay, I'm gonna let that get tacky for a couple minutes while I do a final wipe down on my cylinder head and my engine block. These do have a front and a back, so just make sure you keep track of that when you're doing your spray can gasket refurbishment. When you're ready to sit your heads on, line up your dowel pins, sit it right down, and get your head bolts in. And then you go through the torque sequence. Nothing complicated here, pretty simple. Okay, we've got that head on, torque down. I'm gonna go ahead, get the push rods, rocker arms, and valve cover put back on this side while I'm here. Okay, now I just repeat the process on the other side. All right, everybody. I'm calling it for this video. Here's where I'm leaving things. Got the alternator, water pump, intake manifold, heads, valve covers, ignition coils, fuel rails, all of that stuff back on the engine. Pretty much, it's as far put together as I can get it until more parts come in. I'm waiting on my oil pickup tube to get the oil pan on. I'm waiting for my power steering pump and power steering pump bracket to get that put on. And then the engine portion, at least the physical engine itself portion, will be ready. The next thing I need to start working on is the wire harness. There's gonna be some things I need to update. I'll explain it in that video. But basically, I'm gonna need to take the two harnesses from the intake manifold and the Trailblazer and adjust them / combine them to work as a Camaro harness. Like I said though, that's for a different video. As far as this video goes, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're as excited for this project to be driven as I am. And so far, still under budget. I'll put where I'm at right now at the end of the video here just to get you up to speed. But we're getting to the point that it's just going to be time and labor to get this thing driving. And I'm really excited about that. Thanks again for watching.